Hello. So today we are dealing with the development of genitourinary tract, and this topic I will be speaking in the two sessions. In the first session, I will be speaking on few aspects of genitourinary tract. So these are my objectives. So I'll be today speaking on the development of kidneys and the ureter, and then on the urinary bladder and the urethra. In my second lecture of genitourinary tract, I'll be speaking on testes, ovaries, male and the female genitalia. So let us have a recap over from fourth week. So in the fourth week, we have noted there has happened the differentiation of intra-embryonic mesoderm. As you are aware, in this photograph, sectional image, you can see this being the ectoderm, this being the endoderm, and the mesoderm right here. Mesoderm was differentiated into three parts. Right in the middle is a notochord. On the sides of that comes the paraaxial mesoderms. Next to it comes the on the lateralmost extent happens to be lateral plate mesoderm, and in the middle is the intermediate mesoderm, which could be seen in the subsequent photographs very clearly. So we are aware that this paraaxial mesoderm has contributed into the somite, while the lateral plate mesoderm divided into two as a splanchnopleuric and the somatopleuric mesoderm, and with the appearance of the cavity in between, extraembryonic coelom. While I am now focusing on the intraembryonic mesoderm, which will be right in the middle of this. So today we are going to speak on the development of genitourinary tract, that is what which has been developed from the intraembryonic mesoderm, which is right here. So this intermediate mesoderm, it produces a swelling on the dorsal wall of the embryo, on the sides of the developing aorta. You can see there is a developing aorta here and the gut tube in the middle. And this is the mesentery which connects the gut tube. And on the sides of this, the swellings appear, and they are said to be the urogenital ridge, or can say the ridge which has been contributing for urinary system and the genital system, which further differentiates as this mesonephric ridge and the genital ridge. So this genital ridge will contribute into the gonads that will be speaking on my next lecture. So today we is focusing on this mesonephric ridge, which happens to be a segmented right from caudal to the cranial to the caudal side. So they appear to be a segmented, and this segmentation happens in this three manners. So the kidney, it develops in the three patterns in the reptiles, birds, as well as in the mammals. So that's the pronephros, mesonephros, and the metanephros. So in the lower animals, those kidneys will be in the form of pronephros itself. I'll be speaking subsequently. So this segmentation, what I said, which is happening in this urogen mesonephric ridge, right from cranial to the caudal, the segmentation which is happening in the cervical segment, said to be pronephros. In the thoracic segment will be the mesonephros, and the lower down in the lumbosacral segment will be the metanephros. We'll see the fate of each of these uh, mesonephric ridge segments. And as I said, the pronephros is present in the cervical segment, which is moreover rudimentary and non-functional. So if you see in this photograph, this is the urogenital ridge, which has been segmented in the cranial or the cervical region. It has developed into the pronephric ridge, and this is divided further into the duct system and the tubules. But this duct system is not adequate to open into the cloaca. How the urinary system is, it opens into, it has to be excreted further. And even the tubules are not very adequate to to prepare the excrete material which could be opened directly into the cloaca. Rather, it opens its excretory material in the coelom, intraembryonic coelom, and then it goes into the cloaca. But this is not done as the advanced kidney is concerned for the mammals. When it happens to the so what happens is this regresses. And the duct system, most of these tubules they get regressed. This duct system coincides with the duct system of the subsequent development called as mesonephric kidney. The mesonephric kidney, as I said, happens in the thoracic segments. Again, there happens the tubule system and the duct system, but the duct system is longer enough to open the cloaca, and the tubule is good enough to produce the excretory, to produce the glomerular filtrate, but the selective reabsorption, what is done in the adult kidney, is not possible here. So it loses its function of excretion. So now what to do with a large amount of tubules in the ducts which is formed? Now this duct system which is formed later on contribute into the adult kidney forming the giving the ureteric bud, as well as it contributes into the male reproductive system. So you know duct system in the male reproductive system, that's the ejaculatory duct. So this is the one which contributes into that mesonephric duct. This is called as mesonephric duct. So in the search of the advanced kidney, again, the mesonephric kidney is lost. So next comes the metanephric kidney, metanephric kidney, which happens to be in the lumbosacral segment, which is right here. We'll see. And this is said to be a permanent kidney. While the metanephric kidney, here you'll find it is having the two parts. One is the collecting part, and another one is the excretory part. Collecting is the one which is concerned with the collection of those urinary material, and then which could be excreted into the cloaca. And obviously, this is the one, cloaca is the one which has been contributing for the formation of urinary bladder. So where the urine will be excreted out. So the collecting part and the excretory part, these two units will contribute forming metanephros. In the collecting part, you will see like this, the bud which has been coming out from the mesonephric duct, which I said the mesonephric kidney, where the mesonephric duct has formed. This gives a ureteric bud which grows towards this metanephric blastema. And you will find that the growth of this happens in synchronized formation, like when the duct is approaching towards the metanephric blastema, the further divisions are happening. So what is happening in the collecting part is this collecting part or the ureteric bud which has developed from this mesonephric duct, it forms one ampulla like extension. Further, it divides dichotomously and then form a definitive part called as minor calyces, major calyces, pelvis. Further, they divide to form the collecting tubules. So, this ureteric bud, which has come from mesonephric duct, has contributed into the collecting part. So, till what extent? Till the extent of formation of pelvis, major calyces, minor calyces, and collecting tubules. Till the formation of collecting tubules. The rest of the part, which has forming the parenchyma of the kidney, is forming the excretory part of the kidney. So how they are formed? They are formed from those metanephric blastema or the cells which are there in the lumbosacral segment. Star colored area you can see here. This contributes into the metanephric blastema cells. The cells of this, they clump together and they become vesicular. This is how it appears. They clump together and then later on become vesicular. So these are the one vesicles which will be forming your future nephron. So this vesicle, which has the cavity inside, it forms a pear-shaped structure, and then it further develops to form a S-shaped structure where the terminal end of this will contribute in the formation of glomerulus includes Bowman's capsule, which includes the tuft of capillaries called as glomerulus, while the rest of the part which has been extending forms the PCT, the loop of the Henle, forming a definitive nephron. Thus, the kidney has been developed from these two components in the metanephric phase. One is the collecting part, which has come from this mesonephric duct. The caudal part of this has been extending upwards to form the collecting part. So, till what extent is the collecting part? Right from the pelvis, you can say as the ureter to the pelvis, major calyces, minor calyces, and the collecting tubules. The parenchyma has been formed from the metanephric blastema, and this is how the division has happened to form the complete nephron inside. So this together, in which happens in the cells, will contribute in the formation of the kidney. Now, kidney which is formed is developed in the pelvic region, which is right here. But this is not the definitive place of the kidney. At this place, it gets its blood supply from the median sacral artery. Further, the kidney ascends up, and the reason for the ascent could be a lengthening of ureter, diminution of the fetal curvature as the fetal is getting uncurved. So the it will create the kidney to ascend upwards, and the pelvic cavity being a smaller in the size. So it is one of the reason as the developing kidney as it's growing, it grows upwards, and obviously in search of better nutrition. Better nutrition in the sense it carries the blood supply from multiple sites as it is ascending. So when it is ascending, initially from median sacral artery, then gets its blood from internal iliac and external iliac artery, common iliac, then from the abdominal aorta till it reaches on the surface of the diaphragm, where it gets in closer relation with the suprarenal gland and receives its blood supply from the renal artery. But still, that's not its definite. It has reached to its definitive position, but still, the kidney is vertical in a position. So it has to turn medially. So when it is turning medially, it has to be turned medially since its blood supply to its hilum from the renal artery. So that's the rotation of the kidney which is happening at the last. So development of the kidney we have noted in this form, but it has developed from metanephric phase. So the three phases of the kidney have happened: pronephros, mesonephros, and metanephros. Pronephros disintegrates, small part of tubule left behind contributes into mesonephric duct. Mesonephric kidney has contributed into the mesonephric duct and few of the tubules, which will contribute the ureteric bud in the formation of ureter, collecting part of the kidney. That's the ureter, pelvis, major calyces, minor calyces, collecting tubules. Further, when this ureteric bud is approaching towards the metanephric blastema, the cell divisions happens, like the clumps of the cells they cluster together and they form vesicular from form the definitive size of the nephron. And this kidney which is formed is in pelvic in a position. It ascends upward in a search of a better nutrition and then turns rotates medially to get its normal positions. This is about the development of the kidney. Now let us have a look over how the urinary bladder and the urethra is being developed. To come to this point, you should be aware that the gut tube, which has been developed before, is named as foregut, midgut, and the hindgut, as the head fold and the tail fold of the embryo has happened. So the part of the tube which is enclosed within the head fold is foregut. Part within the tail fold is the hindgut, and the one in the middle is the midgut. So now today we are concerned with the hindgut part, and you are aware near to the hindgut there has happened the allantoid diverticulum. Allantoid diverticulum, which was at the tail end of this hindgut, and the appearance of that allantoid diverticulum at that point divides this hindgut into pre-allantoid part and post-allantoid part. So we are focusing more on this part, post-allantoid part, that is cloaca. Cloaca, that's the terminal part of the gut, hindgut. So this cloaca you can see in this photograph. this cloaca is further divided by the appearance of a septum in between called as a urorectal septum. And this urorectal septum divides the cloaca into two parts, the one extending from the allantois and the one remaining behind. The one which is remaining behind is the primitive rectum. It means that this will be contributing into rectum anal canal. And the one which is left on the ventral side, that is primitive urogenital sinus. Understand this word very clearly. It is urogenital sinus. So it should be contributing into urinary and the genital system. Primitive urogenital sinus. You can see here these two divisions, the one left here and the one other one behind, and the septum which is there in the middle. This is urorectal septum. You can see how this growth has happening. And when this urorectal septum approaches further lower down, the lower end of this pec tube is closed by a cloacal membrane. This is complete. It's the outer ectoderm and the endoderm. There is no mesoderm in between them. So the places where you'll find no mesoderm in between ectoderm and endoderm, it ruptures, like how it happens in the oral opening, stomatodeum. Right? Likewise, we find the cloacal membrane, which happens to be here. It's the membrane, it's a thin membrane which separates, which comprises of ectoderm from outside and the endoderm of the gut tube. Now, when you find that urorectal septum is dividing this hind gut into these two segments, primitive urogenital sinus and primitive recta, it approaches the cloacal membrane and touches at this point. This next photograph you can see it touches this cloacal membrane and divides the cloacal membrane into two membranes further. The membrane closing the primitive rectum will be called as anal membrane. Membrane closing the urogenital sinus, which is called as a urogenital membrane. And the point where it fuses with the cloacal membrane is the perineal body. So that's the perineal body where it is. One more additional thing I would like to add about the urorectal septum is the urorectal septum is happening vertically this way. When this is happening, side by side fusion is also happening called as lateral folds. When this lateral fold is encroaching this urorectal septum, this together, it is also carrying with it the duct system. What I said before, the mesonephric duct. Along with that, there is one more duct called as paramesonephric duct, which contributes into the female genital system, while mesonephric duct will be contributing more to the male genital system. Right? So both of them will be present in the pair on either side when the lateral fold is encroaching this urorectal septum. And obviously, when this is forming, that mesonephric duct will open into this cloacal membrane, cloaca. So coming to the point, we have now this blue colored one called as primitive urogenital sinus, this yellow colored one called as primitive rectum, and urorectal septum in between. This let us see how the urinary bladder is developing or what happens to this primitive urogenital sinus. This primitive urogenital sinus is further divided into two parts called as, you can see this. So this is the primitive urogenital sinus schematic diagram. I have not shown the primitive rectum as we are focusing more on primitive urogenital sinus. And this primitive urogenital sinus is divided into two parts at the point where mesonephric duct encroaches. I said the mesonephric duct, its caudal part contributes into the ureteric bud, and ureteric bud will form the excretory part, so it opens into the urinary bladder. The ureter opens into urinary bladder. Right? So this mesonephric duct joins to the point of the urogenital sinus and divides this into two further parts. Now we need some definitive part out of this. So let us call this as vesico-urethral part canal, as this canal is contributing into urinary bladder and the small part of the urethra. Why? This lower part will be called as definitive urogenital sinus, as it will contribute into the remaining part of the urethra here. So it's called as the definitive urogenital sinus, and this is the mesonephric duct at the junction. So what happens to this mesonephric duct? You know that ureteric, it is contributing into ureteric blood from its caudal part. This is getting absorbed inside here, and this part of the ureter, along with the mesonephric duct, is getting absorbed inside. So focus here. So I was talking about primitive urogenital sinus. So this is the part of hindgut, right? It's a ventral part of the hindgut, and it is endodermal in origin. While this mesonephric duct is mesodermal in origin, and you will find that the mesoderm is getting absorbed inside along with the ureter, forming the posterior wall here. I'll show you what happens further. So this is what is happening initially. Mesonephric duct as well as the ureter is absorbed inside. So in this next photograph, you can see that the vesicourethral canal, this definitive urogenital sinus is further divided as pelvic part and the phallic part. Pelvic part in the sense is inside the pelvis. Phallus is inside the shaft of the hip, contributing the shaft. So this is the phallus part, which is broader. This is about definite urogenital sinus. So let us see how the urinary bladder. Now looking at this, you can find that urinary bladder is, looking at this, you'll find that the urinary bladder is, yeah. So looking at this, you will find that this part is contributing into the urinary bladder. So urinary bladder is formed by the vesicourethral canal. Its terminal part, uh, which is called as allantois, gets fibrosed and it's called as the urachus. While the mesonephric duct as well as ureteric bud, which is absorbed inside, will also contribute into the urinary bladder. So this is the gist of that. The development of urinary bladder happens from vesicourethral part of the cloaca, the mesoderm of mesonephric duct, and the urachus. Let me tell you more about how this absorption happens. If you see this photograph, this is the posterior view of, say, urethral canal, what I said before. So this vesicourethral canal on the posterior side, there happens the opening of mesonephric duct inside this, and there is a ureteric bud which is coming out. So what I said that both of them get absorbed inside, and as the development happens, the wall grows further, it gets differentiated, and you will find that it gets and this triangular area which is contributing into this bladder is the internal trigone. So there is an internal trigone in the interior of the bladder. So that internal trigone is formed from the absorbed part of this mesonephric duct, which is nothing but mesodermal in origin, while the rest of the part of the urinary bladder is endodermal in origin. So I'm talking about the epithelial lining, not the musculature or this. So the musculature will be the splanchnopleuric mesoderm. That's the another part. So the endoderm will contribute into the rest of the part, and the mesoderm is forming the trigone of the bladder. So when this growth is differentiated, growth is happening on the posterior wall, it is carrying along with it the mesonephric duct, and the ureter is holding this part of the mesonephric duct in this way. And you will find in the adult stage that the ejaculatory duct is held over the ureter in this way. And the reason for this is the differential growth of this posterior wall of the urinary bladder, which gives this shape. This is how the urinary bladder is formed. So to take home messages, urinary bladder is formed from the vesico-urethral canal and the absorbed part of mesonephric duct. which is forming this. And the terminal part of the allantois will contribute into the urethra. So that's the development of urinary bladder. Let us see how the urethra is formed. The urethra is formed in the male and the female in the different ways. Let me tell you in short about the urethra in the male. It is formed from the three derm, ecto, endo, as well as a mesoderm. So the male urethra has these three parts called as prostatic, membranous, and the phallic part of the spongy urethra. The prostatic part of the urethra above the opening of the ejaculatory duct, or you can say the opening of mesonephric duct, is formed by the endoderm of vesicourethral canal, which could be seen in this vesicourethral canal part of the yellow colored part above the opening of this ejaculatory. This is the mesonephric duct, or you can say as the ejaculatory duct, which forms later on. So above this is contributed by vesicourethral canal, caudal part of this vesicourethral canal. So part below this, as well as you will find the mesonephric duct is also absorbed on its posterior wall. So mesonephric duct on its dorsal wall is contributing into the prostatic part. Below ejaculatory duct, it is contributed by endoderm of the pelvic part of definite urogenital sinus. So you see this photograph. This is the definite urogenital sinus, and this is the pelvic part, phallic part. So this pelvic part is contributing to the uh, prostatic part of the urethra. While this continuation will find that this remaining part, or you can say the pelvic part of the definite urogenital sinus contributes into the membranous part, while the spongy part is contributed by endoderm of phallic part here, endoderm of the phallic part, as well as the ectoderm, incorporation of the ectoderm. So this is how the male urethra is formed. While in the female, the caudal part of the vesicourethral canal, you can see in this photograph, the caudal part of this vesicourethral canal is contributing into this, as well as the absorbed part of the mesonephric duct and the pelvic part of the urogenital sinus, while the phallic part is contributing into the vestibule of the vagina. So in the female, it's the ectoderm and it's the mesoderm and the endoderm, not the ectoderm is involved, the formation of urethra. Let us come to the developmental anomalies. Agenesis of the kidney. It means kidney has failed to develop. Why it happens? Ureteric bud. I've said that the development happens when these two units come together, the ureteric bud and the metanophylblastum. When they fail to develop on one side, ureteric bud itself fails to develop, then there happens the agenesis of the kidney. The multiple kidney can happen when the early splitting of the ureteric bud happens, and the horseshoe-shaped kidney by the fusion of the lower pole of the kidney will lead into this horseshoe-shaped kidney. Congenital polycystic kidney happens when there is the expiratory tubules fails to get connected with the collecting part. So those vesicles get polycystic, called as congenital polycystic kidney. There are a few more anomalies concerned with the urachus. You have seen the urachus is formed from the cylindrical diverticula. If there happens the communication, complete communication through and through from urinary bladder, if it fails to regress from urachus, this retain into the fistula, or small part of it fails to fuse and its terminal end fuses, leaving some fluid-filled cavity inside called a urachal cyst. And if there is a closure at one end, while the other end remains open, leading to the collection of fluid inside, called as urachal sinus. And if the entry of the bladder opens up to the exterior by the failure of fusion of the anti-abdominal wall, lead into the ectopy vesicae. So this is how the ectopy vesicae looks like. The bladder is faced outside. So that's all about the development of kidney. ureter at the urethra. Thank you. Further, I would like to show you a video uh, and which will help you to understand more clearly about the things I have explained right now. So this video I'd like to share. And this is few advertisement, and further you will see that how in this video I have put to show you how this all happens in the three dimensional. Let us see how this nephrogenic cord has developed, and this is the section which is taken. And I have said you before that in the fourth week, what has happened, the division of this mesoderm into three parts, paraxial, intermediate, and the lateral. When this division is happening, there happens the foldings of the embryo, which incorporates the gut tube inside. So the gut tube incorporates forming the yolk cell. And you will find this position where the intraembryonic coelom and the nephrogenic cord, which is developed in the intermediate mesoderm. And this is the one which contributes into the kidney, which is developed from cranial to the caudal end. These two nephrogenic cord, which get segmented at the multiple level. So the formation of kidney and ureter happens by the formation of mesonephros. Like pronephros happens in the region cranially, where the duct and the tubule system is formed, which degenerates as the this is not contributing to the definitive stage. Further, mesonephric duct and mesonephric tubules develop in the advanced formation, and you will find that the duct system is larger enough to get opened into the developing hindgut of the cloaca, which is seen. This is the developing hindgut, yellow colored one you can see, and this is the allantoid diverticulum. This is midgut. And you will find that this duct system will see opening into the cloaca. And the function of this is limited. So this again degenerates in the adult form, and it will contribute into the male reproductive system, duct system. It's a ejaculatory duct, and also contribute into the in the metanephric phase where it gives a ureteric bud, comes with the nephronephric blastema, and further development of the adult stage kidney happens. So here, what happens is this ureteric bud divides dichotomously to forming the major calyces, minor calyces, pelvis, ureter. Further, they form the collecting tubules. So this duct system has come from metanephric blastema. So this is the collecting tubules which is formed. Simultaneously, the parenchyma of the kidney is developing. That is the expiratory part, which is seen here. So when this duct system, the ampulla has come nearby, the metanephric blastema, they cluster together to form the vesicles like and get ampulla-like shape further, tear shape, and gets and develop into the nephron. They form S-shaped tube and then contributes into the glomerular capsule, proximal tubule, DCT, loop of Henle. It's a definitive nephron. The kidney which is developed is in the pelvic stage, which ascends upwards further and come to the stage below the diaphragm, which is right here. On its face, when you do the ascending, it carries along with it the blood supply from the different regions and come to the definitive stage where it comes in an approximation with suprarenal gland. and thus the kidney and the urinary system, ureter is formed the ninth week of the embryo. Now let us see how the urinary bladder and the urethra is forming. I said it's the hind gut or the terminal part called as the cloaca, which is divided into two parts called as urogenital sinus, primitive rectum, by the urorectal septum in between. This is the urorectal septum, which is developing inside. And when it approaches here, the perineal body and the two membranes, cell membrane, while this being the urogenital membrane. Simultaneously, mesonephric duct and the paramesonephric duct approaches to these sinuses. So the formation of urinary bladder happens from vesicourethral canal and the absorbed part of mesonephric duct, which happens in this way. Later on, it differentiates, the posterior wall differentiates, and the absorption of this happens, where the separation of ureter and the duct system happens. So we'll see what happens posteriorly when it is out. Inside, the separation of this duct system happens as the differentiation is happening, and this absorbed part will contribute into the trigone of the bladder, while this hanging part is forming ejaculatory duct. Now the wallet of new urethra is contributed. This remaining part of this definitive urogenital sinus, urethral canal, will contribute into male urethra along with the ectoderm from here. So it has three parts: prostatic, membranous, and the phallic part. The female, it is contributed by urogenital sinus, primitive urogenital, and the definitive vesicourethral canal and definitive urogenital sinus. And simultaneously, the paramesonephric duct develops and contributes into the female genital system. So that's all about this development. Thank you.